Okay, here we go. We're recording. All right. Hi, I'm Megan Shuey with Unleashed Business Confessions and Unleashed, and I'm here today with Gail Jessen. I'm so excited to have her here today to tell us her story of how she sold all of her stuff that wouldn't fit in a backpack and has been traveling the world. So welcome, Gail. Please tell us more about you.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. We've been following each other around online, but it's nice to actually finally talk to each other.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
so like you said, the punchline is that I left a 15-year career. I sold everything, moved into a backpack, started a business. Um, the reason that I did all of that is probably similar to how other people who are listening to this might be feeling, but I was sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Mhm.
Right? I was just done. I was just done not loving every day, and I was just done feeling stuck. And I knew that it was going to take something really extreme to pull me out of it. And so what I did was something really extreme to pull me out of it.
And tell me more about your feeling stuck and not loving every day. What were you doing?
Yeah, I had a career in higher ed, and I worked in that career for 15 years. And at one point I loved it. And as I found, as I moved up into administration or took on different positions, it just didn't have the same joy. But I had in my mind this sort of list of supposed to
Mhm.
things, right? Like good girls have a salary and responsible girls have a mortgage. And this is just what you do, right? Like this is what you're supposed to do. And I let that be true for myself. And I let a lot of fear stop me from doing what I knew I wanted to do, which was be a creative gypsy and feel like I was connected to my work. So I was just stuck, and I was so misaligned from who I knew I was, and all of that list of supposed tos was so not who I am that it just ended up making me really sick. And I finally just decided that I want to be healthy, and I want to be happy, more than I want to feel safe, or more than I want to feel
Mm.
whatever this checklist is. And I just decided I'd had enough. And yeah, that was it. I'm sure people can relate. It's common. It's common among professional people. It's common among professional women in particular, right? You do too much, and you do too much that's possibly not aligned with your soul. And that's where I was for years. That's where I was.
Tell me, you said that you were sick, and now you weren't just sick and tired in a theoretical sense, you were actually sick. So tell us about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I am. I didn't realize this. It's been about just under a year and a half ago, but I had been living with an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's, and it's an autoimmune disease that attacks the thyroid. So there's an endocrine axis with your adrenals and your ability to handle stress, your thyroid and your metabolism and your energy, and sort of neurologically, the sort of brain fog or clarity, right? And all of those things just broke. They had been not well for years, but they finally snapped. And I finally fought my way to a doctor that gave me a diagnosis. And I had never heard of Hashimoto's. I had suspicions that something was weird with my thyroid, but it was in that moment in her office, because the way she gave me the diagnosis was she sort of turned around with lab reports, and she had one hand on her throat, thyroid. She said, "Your body's attacking itself." And I sort of like out of body experience. And I thought, well, of course it is. Of course your body's attacking itself. And of course it's attacking yourself here because you're not speaking your truth, right? You're not living the kind of life that you want to live, and everything is stuck. And so, of
Mm-hmm.
course, it's attacking itself. And I clearly got into the more scientific and research based and functional medicine and what do I actually do about it. But the metaphysical to do list was knock it off. Like, say what you need to say and get unstuck so that you can free all of that energy and all of that that's making you sick, because you're so misaligned. If you keep doing this, you're just going to get worse.
So what did you do first? How did you get unstuck? What was the very first thing you did?
Oh, my mind, in the practical sense, my mind goes to research. So I just dove into everything that I could learn about Hashimoto's. I'd never heard of it. It sounds like sushi. I don't know what it is. So I really dug into it to really understand. This was not a time to numb out. This was not a time to be afraid of a weird, scary diagnosis that I didn't know what it was. This was the time to really dig into it and understand, what is this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then on the more sort of metaphysical or spiritual side, I had my core desired feelings. If people are familiar with Danielle Laporte's desire map, I had my core desired feelings and they mattered to me and I lived with them, but there was something very different when that happened. Something shifted where it was like, these are not negotiable anymore. If you did all this work to identify how it is that you want to feel and what is aligned to your soul, that can't just be a nice idea anymore. That has to full on be a way of living your life. And I just made it non-negotiable and I set new boundaries and I started saying no to things and I gave myself permission to not apologize for feeling the way I want to feel. And I just started to shift that whole paradigm of the responsible girl that does what she's supposed to do. And I became responsible to my health and I became responsible to myself. And that was a big shift because I was not, all the rest of it up to that point was for other people. And I stopped and I let it be about me. And the magic is that the people who got that came along with me, right? That's the secret no one talks about. So,
Yeah, we're all striving because we think we're supposed to do things. And when we stop and we look around, we see the people that really actually matter to us most are still there going, okay, I'm with you. What are you doing? I'll support you with
yep,
whatever. And the ones that don't matter weren't there anyway. So what an
right.
interesting and, really pivotal moment, I suppose, in your life to kind of look back. Now, tell me about your core desired feelings, because that's one of the things that I think that's kind of how we met, or is through a Danielle Laporte desire map, something or other. And I'd love to know what your core desired feelings are.
Yeah. So my core desired feelings, I put I am in front of my core desired feelings because I think we underestimate the power of saying I am something. And so I say, I am wild, I am magical, I am supple, and I am luminous. So
Ooh.
it took me a while to refine that list down and really understand what that meant. So,
Mhm.
for example, when we're talking about core desired feelings, the whole point of that is to know that in goal setting, you're not chasing the goal, right? You know this. You know Danielle's work. You're not actually chasing the thing that you think that you're
Mhm.
chasing. You're really just chasing how you want to feel when you get there. So instead, if you
Mhm.
back yourself up and you let yourself define, what are my core desired feelings? How is it that I want to feel? Then every goal can flow forward from that point. So I had an initial core desired feeling of free. And it was
Mhm.
free because I was still in my career. I was still in my condo. I still had a car. I still owned way too much shit. And I needed to feel free. And it was sort of this baseline, but I knew that that core desired feeling was actually wild, right? Free is not going to be enough for me. It has to be full scale, out and about, nomadic wildness. But I let free sustain me for a while and give me a goal. And then the day I quit my job, it became wild and I have not looked back. So,
Isn't that an interesting transition? I mean, I had one of my core desired feelings when I first did the exercise was dynamic.
mm,
And I found that that was not really what I thought I wanted, was a lot of change and movement, when really I wanted some fresh things to be fresh.
yeah,
And so fresh became mine instead of dynamic when I really dug into what the word meant. And dynamic actually wasn't it wasn't good. I never felt like anything was easy or grounded, or I could ever stop. Where
yeah,
fresh just feels new and fresh grass and all the kinds of stuff that fresh embodied for me. So that it's an
yeah,
interesting how those words just ebb and flow, um, and I think it's always a journey. So that's really cool. And now you teach the desire map, correct? You're teaching
me
that, you
too.
are a licensee and teach
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I think that was initially how we met was in some sort of desire map discussion group online, but I followed it through and decided to become one of her licensed coaches. So I now can work with her material, and this is what I help my clients move through. And it was one of those moments where she opened up licensing on her material maybe a month and a half after I was diagnosed. And it was just one of those lightning bolt moments, right? And I went, your core desired feelings are the reason that in the moment you're diagnosed, you don't numb out and pull back. In the moment you're diagnosed, you know, that's it, I'm quitting my job and I'm traveling. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I can barely walk out of this office without feeling dizzy and tired, but I'm going to do that. And it was my core desired feelings that made that possible. So when she announced her licensing, I thought, how obvious is that I can, you know, coach people and work with people anywhere online. And the reason that I have to Skype them from Latvia or Indonesia is because my core desired feelings got me there. And I want to give people that same clarity and that same permission to feel the way they want to feel. And so my favorite thing is working with people who are in some sort of a transition. You've hit the moment where you realize you're stuck and you realize you want more. And I just love being a catalyst. I always say I'm a coach and I'm a fire starter, right? Because I want to be that catalyst for you. You'll do the work, but I want to crack you open and give you that permission that you can feel the way you want to feel. It'll change your life. It'll radically change your life. So yeah, that's what I do now.
So tell me about, go ahead.
No, that's it.
So when you decided to sell everything and that didn't fit in a backpack and you were going to travel, how did you figure out how to make a business work while you were doing that? What were kind of, it's totally in alignment. I mean, you can't get it more aligned with your CDFs than what you're doing. But how did you kind of technically make that happen? Did you have to buy a new computer? Did you have to, like, how did you figure out how to make that happen?
Yeah, so that's such a great question. And there's a nitty gritty answer, and then there's sort of a macro answer. And I'll start with the macro and move in. I looked at what had I been doing to that point to support myself, what education, what skills did I have, and then what could that translate into, but translate in a way that made me feel magical, wild, supple, and luminous, right? So working in higher education for all those years, I had been designing curriculum. I'd been working with professors to get their syllabi on point. I'd been doing consulting and speaking and teaching and mentoring just in a higher ed setting. So I thought, who's to say that those skills don't translate into coaching and mentoring and consulting, and just the content is a little sexier and more soulful now, but it's really the same skills. So I started with the skills that I had, looked at what could I reasonably do with that and be good at doing. And then I filled in the gaps, obviously, with additional training that I felt like I needed or resources that would sort of help me change fields, but the skills translate entirely. So that's sort of the macro, and that's a good place for people to start if they're looking to transition, is what are you already doing? And then in the micro, it's a unique situation in the sense that anything I do has to be location independent, right? There's no brick and mortar, there's no mailing address, there's no meeting with a client, there's no business cards, there's no mailing a flyer, like there's none of that. Everything has to be completely online. And so that means a very tiny, light MacBook Air, because again, you're in a backpack, right? I can't even have a full-blown laptop. External hard drive, online services, online calendar services, online video recording and streaming services. I have to be really active on social media. I think we all do. I mean, I do in particular because I don't see people. So yeah, there were a lot of tech considerations when you think, if you're on the other side of the world, floating on a tropical island in the middle of nowhere, how are you going to talk to someone, 14 time zones away? And what does that look like? So that's sort of the nitty gritty of what I needed to figure out. And I had to invest money and time and really get myself figured out as to what's the technological infrastructure that gives me the freedom I want to have. What can I automate? What can I pay for that's worth the service of knowing it'll be high quality, or I can send recordings or whatever it is. So those are more of the logistical considerations that I had to go through.
Yeah. And I think there's a high level of learning for any business to go online. I mean, I've been a business coach for 15 years and there's nothing like an online business. There's just nothing.
Yeah.
And so all the tech considerations, a lot of those you need anyway. Yours just probably happened to be, it all had to be super light and it had to work and it had to, if you had, I'm assuming if you have connection to Wi-Fi, you are open for business. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yep. That's how I had to look at it. And really, I think, I mean, even if people have a brick and mortar or a home-based business, or they're looking at one or the other, and they're even in a beginning stage, I think it's a useful exercise to imagine, what if my business opened up shop on the beach in Kauai for a week? What would it have to look like? Like, it's just an interesting exercise of need versus want versus what's essential versus what is it that I really do with my clients, or whatever it is, with my products or my design or whatever it is that you're doing. It's an interesting exercise. Minimalism really forces you into a very creative mindset, and things that I would have thought I could never negotiate in terms of needing to run a business, whatever I thought that meant, they are very negotiable. And you realize how light and how quick and how free you can feel in your business. Even if you're in a brick and mortar and you show up every day and unlock the door, there are ways to make it feel light and adventurous and playful. And I think that's beneficial, to use that minimalism as an exercise to realize, how can this be more fun and feel more free, as opposed to something I have to do, right? Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was so interesting, I followed you on your blog and on social media when you were in Bali, and where did you go after that?
Myanmar and Thailand.
Yes. Yeah, and how your plane was delayed for like a day or two, and how your plan to do some writing for online a blog, I'm assuming you were going to get paid for that, fell through, and there was so when you are, take us back to that moment when you realized that this is just a mess.
Yeah.
What did that feel like versus the worst day at your job? Like, which one would you rather have?
Yeah. So here's the picture we can paint, right? A volcano exploded on an island just east of Bali. The smoke in the air shut down the airport for 4 days. So in terms of travel, discussing my travel, my visa expired and I was technically an illegal immigrant in the island. Yeah. So I was illegally in Indonesia, which is a lovely place, but to be fair, it's not a place that you want to illegally hang out in, especially with a carry-on bag full of pills that you have to explain, all my medication. So it was a little touch and go. It was a little scary. I was on the phone with the embassies. I was on the phone with immigration. I was trying to, anyway, all of that is neither here nor there. The travel people will be excited by that, but that's what was happening. So the point is, though, it was still, and this is so key, and actually this is something that I work with my clients about, that everything is a choice and everything can be an adventure. Everything, right? Like, my worst day being stuck on the island of Bali in a gorgeous Airbnb on the beach with a pool, and I paid like $8 a night or something stupid, right? So yes, I was illegal, but I still had Wi-Fi. I was still swimming and laying out in the sun and doing my thing and getting online and talking to clients, right? But it's because I saw it as an adventure. I didn't see it as the end of the world, right? And my worst day in my other job, the difference was being stuck in Bali and feeling like there was some stress and tension and a low point. And I was, in fact, late for a travel writing gig that I had in Myanmar. But that still made me feel magical, and it made me feel supple and flexible. And I still felt the way I wanted to feel, because my personality of being a traveler, I would take being stuck anywhere over being stuck in an office, right? Even an airport, because there's still movement to it. But the fact is, you have the choice to see things as an adventure. And if you know what's important to you, and if you know how you want to feel, then you can know how to flip any given situation, right? Like back when my core desired feeling was free, I knew that free was really important to me. But when I was on a medical leave from work, I was at the peak of my sickness. And the only thing that I could accomplish in a single day was walking 1 block to the grocery store and walking 1 block home. And that was it. And I was exhausted and sweaty. And that was my whole day. And I had to let that be an adventure. And I had to let that 2 block round trip let me feel free and let me feel like I had been on a little trip, right? That I had to let that be true for myself or I would have gone crazy, right? So you have the choice in any given moment to decide to feel the way you want to feel. And my whole brand of a series of adventures is to help people understand that your life really can be just one series of adventures after another. And it's a mindset. It's not where you were. It's not even what's happening to you. It really is the mindset that you approach it with. And I think that everything in life should be an adventure, and not just because I'm a gypsy, but because I think everything should be adventurous. And you deserve to feel that way, even if it's really shitty. You deserve to feel adventurous. So, and engaged.
I went on my first trip to Hong Kong. My husband's father is Chinese and from Hong Kong, so we went to visit his cousins and family there. And our plane was delayed in Minneapolis, which is where I live, for 24 hours. But they didn't. It wasn't a nice, easy delay. We sat on the plane for 4 hours. They let us off. They wanted us to get back on, and it still didn't take off. And then we ended up having to stay overnight. And I just thought it was the funniest thing because we never left, Minnesota, and yet we went on an adventure. And there were so many people who were mad and upset and angry, and I can imagine with kids it might be a different story, but I just thought it was hilarious. And we got to know people who were, flying on to Japan or wherever. So it was a great adventure, and I think it really is mindset and what you do with it. But I think when you're in a box in an office, at least my experience, you're not supposed to feel that way. Again, it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be on track, on time, productivity up, all that stuff. There's always priorities and things like that you don't, you just don't get to feel free. You feel like there's maybe moments, but the irony is that being trapped in the Minneapolis airport, I was not free at all, but I absolutely felt like I was. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say, even though you were illegally in a country, it still was wild and
right.
and magical and supple.
Exactly.
So tell me, about what has been your lowest point in your business so far?
Lowest point in my business. I think the pre-revenue startup days are hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we do anyone any favors by glossing over the fact that it's hard and it's not always enjoyable. And you can be doing something that you want to be doing. You can be doing something that you're good at, that is going to benefit people. And it can still be really crappy. And that's okay because it's the right kind of crappy, if that makes sense, right? Like, at least it's a difficult situation, but it's difficult for yourself or it's difficult for your clients, right? So there was a lot of pre-revenue startup time frame where there were so many ideas and I wanted to be there already, but I had to build all these structures, right? So my creative brain was 10 steps ahead of me. And I was already running my first online program, right? And I was already getting the book out there and I was already doing that. And I had to back that up and I had to understand that even the minutia of building the structures that would support my business, even that was creative. In some ways, more creative. It was a literal act of creation. What is the framework that will support my business online? I get to build that, right? What is my ideal client and where are they? And how can I build connections and networks to them, right? So I had to turn the minutia, which I can do it, but it's not my favorite thing. I had to turn it into an act of creativity and creation. And that's what helped me understand that this is going to be a good 6 to 8 months of just really hard structural foundational work, but you're building and you're creating. So let it be fun and recognize it for what it is and be grateful that you're in a position to even do it, right? That you were brave enough to take yourself to a point to even start that. So that's what I had to, that I think was the lowest point. That was tough.
So Elizabeth Gilbert in her book Big Magic talks about how she never wanted her creativity to have to support her because it puts too much weight on top of it. And I think, and when I read that part in the book, I just was so fascinated because I think that's what you're talking about, is that the startup of a business is birthing something that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in the way you're going to do it. So it has to be very creative and very, innovative. And yet that's not where you typically make any money. And so it feels fruitless. It feels like I'm doing all this stuff and it isn't. And yet what happens is it just kind of weighs down the creativity. And by the time you get to the point, maybe it's 6 months where you've got, like you said, the structure built, it's so weighted down with worry and with anxiety over how am I going to pay my bills and all those things that it almost dissolves. It's just squashed out of being. And so there's like this gap in there where I think people either make it or they don't. They either persevere or they don't. And so I'm just, that's such a great way for you to have talked about that in a way where it's creative, creating something new, and yet you want to make money. And so as a business coach, one of the hardest things for me to do is to tell somebody you need 6 months to a year's worth of savings of what you have been used to making if you're going to continue to have a mortgage and continue to have the car payment and all those things, that they don't want to hear that. And a lot of times they don't believe me. So you kind of did it in a different way. You got rid of all that weight.
I got rid of all
assuming.
Yeah, I got,
I mean,
it was as simple as canceling everything in terms of no more Netflix, no more Hulu. I mean, you spend money in little ways that you don't even realize, right? And I stripped all of that down, sold my car, put renters in my condo, sold my stuff, that brought in money, canceled everything, focused exclusively on my credit cards, got rid of consumer debt. Like I took myself to the point, because again, if I'm going to say that I'm my core self when I feel wild, I don't make a monthly minimum payment to Amex and feel super wild, right? So I had to go. That was not negotiable anymore. That's what your core desired feelings can do for you, is they really clarify, like, yeah, your Netflix, HBO Go, Hulu, and whatever else Amazon subscription. This program is not brought to you by any of those, but all of those subscriptions, like they may,
this one's free,
right? They may make you feel comfortable, or they may make you feel, indulgent, or, I mean, there's benefit in that, but do they make you feel the way you want to feel? And for me, supple and wild and magical and sort of out there in the world doesn't require a Netflix subscription. So it left, right? You learn what to say no to. And there's pockets of money that you didn't think could be there. The advantage of my Hashimoto's too is I had to follow an incredibly strict elimination diet called the autoimmune protocol. I had no choice but to cook for myself. So there was the, single urban girl not going out to eat, not having brunch every weekend. That in and of itself saved money. But I think if you have a trust fund and want to start a business, good for you. I think the majority of us have to figure out how to make it work. And the why you're doing it is what's going to keep you going at the moment where you're like, forget it. Like, how many times could I have just gone back to consulting, right? How many times in 15 years of working in higher ed could I just have called someone in my network and picked up a gig at a college somewhere, right? But you hit those moments where you realize, I want to be happy and magical and wild and supple and luminous more than I want to feel safe, or more than I want that income right now, because you're working for something bigger, and your core desired feelings will focus you on that so intensely that the startup months or the slow months or low months. They're in a different perspective. You're playing a long game with your happiness. You're not playing what's this month's profit. You are, but you're balancing it with, this much larger picture. So that's what kept me going.
When I think deciding to get rid of Netflix and Hulu and all the kinds of things that that we subscribe it's all, I think it's to dull those feelings and to kind of put a cover on it. Maybe we can feel a little bit wild when we watch an Avengers movie, or we can, we tend to kind of create a situation when we watch things or when we, consume things that we think is filling up those buckets.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that doesn't it's temporary.
Right.
And that's maybe okay for now, but I think I love what you did, and that you decided you wanted more. And the irony is that by wanting more, you have less of those things that don't matter. So I think that's just such a powerful message.
Yeah, you definitely, Danielle has said this before, and it's been a really great meditation for me, that focus creates expansion, right? So you feel like you have less and you feel like you're focusing on so few things, but you will feel so much more expansive and creative because of that. Mm-hmm. And I love movies, and I love going to movies in the theater, and I actually miss it when I travel. I miss it a lot. So it's not even a judgment on media we consume. It's more a ratio of, you intuitively know when you're using something to numb out versus you're using something for a break in the afternoon because your brain is fried because you've been on the phone all day with clients. Like, there's a difference. You know that difference.
Yep.
And the problem is that we trick ourselves into thinking that the degree to which we're numbing out is just a temporary glitch in the matrix, when you've been temporarily glitching for years, right? I was temporarily
absolutely
on things I didn't want for 33 years of my life, and I just wrote it off, right? So we know intuitively when it's time to push ourselves, and it's time to start the business, or it's time to call the prospective client, or it's to whatever it is. We know we need to let ourselves be brave enough to listen to it, but we know the difference.
I think one of the hardest things is once you know, so we always know, but once we know and acknowledge it and we speak it either internally or externally, like, I want more, you can never go back. Like, can you imagine like calling up your old job and saying, I'm coming back? And it isn't that it was probably a great job, and at the time, it was fulfilling in ways, whatever, but you just can never go back. And I think that's the hard part, that I think a lot of people don't want to make a move or don't want to acknowledge, because they know they'll never be able to go back, and that what they have now will never be enough. And that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And yet that's where creativity lies, and that's where innovation lies, and that's where the wild spirit lies, and where you actually get to become your real self. So kudos to you for doing it. I think you're such an inspiration, and I've just so loved your stories and all of your adventures. And why don't you tell us what your website is and where we can find out more about you?
Yeah, so it's a series of adventures.com. And on a series of adventures, there's a link to email me, and there's all sorts of social links. Everything you need will be on the landing for that site. And the idea being that everything in your life, no matter what stage you're in, should feel like a series of adventures, and you get to play with it, and you get to expand on it and decide what you want your adventure to be. Mine looks like this. Yours doesn't have to, right? And the adventure at one point was walking 2 blocks round trip. So it's whatever your adventure is, it's a mindset. So that's what I like to help people do. It's liberation, really. It's getting them to realize that you have a choice. So, yeah.
That's so fantastic. Anything else you want to add before we are done for the day?
You had asked me, I think, in an email exchange we had, if I had a particular
Yes.
mantra or something that is sort of my go-to.
Yes.
Maybe
Do you
that's a
have
good
one?
place to end. Yeah, so it's actually
Sure.
song lyrics. So music is everything to me. Um, it's a folk singer, Ani DeFranco, and it's a song called Swan Dive.
Oh yeah.
Right. So there's this line in Swan Dive, and if I was brave enough for tattoos, I'm working up to it. This will be one of them. It's such a beautiful statement about the fact that the universe is loving and the universe is safe and you'll be supported. Call it God, call it universe, call it energy, call it love, call it your mom. It doesn't matter. The point is that you're safe. For me, that's the ocean and it's feminine energy. So she has
Mm.
this line in the song and she says, I can jump ship and swim. The ocean will hold me. And that's the most beautiful metaphor of knowing. If you're listening to this recording, you're probably in the world of entrepreneurship or you're thinking about it or it's tempting you. And the idea that you can jump ship, you can swim, the ocean will hold you. You have no idea how safe and deserving and valuable and loved you really are until you push yourself out of what feels comfortable. So yeah, I would say that Ani's I can jump ship and swim, the ocean will hold me. That's what I want for my clients. That's what I want for anyone who's listening to this that's in whatever stage of business. Just jump, jump. The ocean will hold you. Just do it. Do it, do it, do it. It's so worth it. Even when it's hard, it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. That's a great way to end it. Thank you so much for your time today. It was so great to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better. I knew that we would have lots to talk about. So, um, again, your website, a series of adventures.com, and all of your info is on there. So go check out Gail when you get a chance and check out all of her blogs because they're fantastic. You're just such a great writer, and you just I love it because I just feel like I'm there with you, and yet I don't have to go and deal with the mosquitoes and the humidity. I'm
Right.
not really much of a tropical.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. I'll take care of it all. I'll just bring you in words.
thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And have a great rest of the day and good luck on your next trip to Latvia, right?
Yep, Latvia in about a week. So
Oh,
thank you.
safe travels.
Thank you. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Yep. Take care. Bye.